loved interviewing engineers. It just I owe you one. They're precise. Anyways, he said, in the course of the discussion, he said, "Hey, Rod, you know what the best part in any design is?" I said, "No, Jim. What's the best part in any design?" He said, "It's the part that isn't there." This guy was involved in designing, I think it was like the breathing apparatus aboard the orbiting spacecraft for a lunar, expedition on the surface. And this guy had designed the part in the spacecraft to enable people to keep breathing. And he gave me the example. He said, if you were a million miles from the service station, as the astronauts were in that instance, or whatever the mileage is, and you had a really critical piece of machinery on which everybody's lives depend, would you want that based on a design involving 25 moving parts or 10 moving parts? 10 moving parts. How come? Fewer things can go wrong. The elegance of simplicity, okay? The elegance of simplicity, and that's what we want you guys to do. And you are not dumbing it down. Do not think for a minute what you're doing is you're making sure that you have and keep an audience who understands exactly what you're saying. And if you cut out the verbiage, the excess, you leave more room for the good stuff. Think about that. Another piece of information, elegantly expressed, simply expressed, and if possible, there are always examples to illustrate what it is you mean. Illustrations are really good. Examples are always good, okay? Any symbols you see that you don't understand? Are there any other symbols out there? I know you might think, well, it'd be great if you would write in English rather than Greek. I can't make out your writing. I got it. But are there any symbols that you can't make out? We're all clear? You guys know exactly? Cool. So, somebody, look at what you got. You're all a somebody, right? So, tell me something that I told you, some piece of feedback. Because I'll bet you the guy next to you or across the room got the same thing. If you made a mistake or you made something that needs to be, addressed, guarantee you were not alone. So what did I write? This is deadline A. Get the deadline B. Sorry to scare some of you guys. What did I say to you? Yeah.
Some things are just too wordy, which is understandable.
Just too wordy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Make every word count. Murder your babies. That baby doesn't justify its existence. It's going overboard. Okay. The old saying in the trade, murder your babies. Pretty gruesome. You wrote it because it was a thing of beauty and eloquence, and it just had to be said. Good. Get it out of your system. If it doesn't justify its existence, really fast, real clearly, real succinctly, get rid of it. Yeah.
The big problem is the paragraphs, they're too long.
What's that?
Paragraphs, they're too long.
Yeah, limit those graphs, guys. Now listen, it does, I'll be honest with you, I sound kind of dogmatic. You got it, thou shalt, okay. You gotta do that. But everything I say ought to be, if we're being honest, if I'm being honest, ought to have an asterisk with it. A little asterisk. Because you can't be locked into it has to be this way, it won't work. There are always exceptions to the rule, and that asterisk is, by that I mean, there are exceptions to every rule, except that you have to be accurate, right? You got to be accurate. For example, one of you guys, I forget who it is, but it's probably 2/3 of my way editing through your stuff. And by the way, it takes an half an hour for me to get through each of your papers. I have to read them a couple times. Somebody wrote a lead that person could have written in advance, but he or she did it so well, and it so effectively set up the second graph, which was a quote, it worked, okay, it worked, it simply worked. But that was probably the only instance where somebody wrote a lead that could have been written before they ever walked into College Center 146. And don't do that. It's easy, it's lazy, and it's not gonna, I'm not gonna let you get away with that. Because the guy who might be hiring you, giving you the internship, sure as hell, that man or woman's not gonna let you do that, or they're gonna give you feedback fast, okay? Be a reporter, justify the paycheck. All right, something else I wrote.
You said avoid they pronouns.
Oh, yeah, if you have a he or an it or something in there, make sure we know exactly to whom you're referring. Sometimes there's multiple nouns in there. And it's clear to you, and I know who you're talking, but the reader might not.
Yeah, I thought it was justified just because, like, you know, his name was there previously, you know, and like near each other or whatever. So
It jarred me though, so, and guys, ultimately, you and I are editing it for that mythical reader out there, right? That's what an editor's doing, is making sure what you're writing is gonna be easily understood by the readers or the audience. It's broadcast out there. Alex, what you got?
opinion.
Oh, just give me your opinion out of it, your value judgments. Don't say the guy made a really interesting point. Don't. Who says? You. Well, okay. And if it is, and this is the important stuff, trust the facts, trust the record to speak for itself. If what the person said was interesting, his or her comments will speak for themselves. Okay? The reader can, don't tell the reader. Now, if you're writing a column or you're writing an opinion piece, obviously, but even there, try to leave references to yourself out of it, but you're allowed to make value judgments there. You guys are not writing editorials, you're not writing columns in there, all right? Not in this class, you're writing news. So keep your judgments out of it. And sometimes judgments can be really, really subtle. But don't say somebody's remarks were hilarious. You know, just, I don't know. They might have been. I'm not saying they weren't, but don't, you know, try not to, don't edit, the term is don't editorialize, all right? Don't go making judgments. You're gonna be making judgments anyways, just by virtue of what goes down on, the screen or on paper, but let's not make it so overt, right? Something else. What did I tell you?
Awkward.
Awkward? Okay. And listen, this is where, and I don't know if I wrote it on every paper, but all of you, and me, I gotta remind myself of this to do. Read aloud your writing. You guys, if you practice that, you'll be surprised at what you catch. Your ear will catch what your eyes miss. And if you forget to do that, I guarantee you'll end up with some sort of embarrassment that you probably could have avoided if you just have read the damn thing aloud. How does it sound? Does it flow? Wait a minute, is there a missing word? Wait a minute, is there a missing punctuation that causes a traffic jam to occur in that sentence that could be avoided had you had proper punctuation? Read aloud your writing, guys. If I can give you any, 5 tips, that's gotta be in there. Well, read aloud your writing. Yeah.
I looked at comment, but I don't really know what you mean by it. You said, notice how you might streamline your reporting.
Streamline it. Make it, if it's said in 15 words, could you say it in 12? Without losing any comprehension? That's what I mean. It's gotta flow. It's gotta flow. Because that's what the audience wants. You know what you like to read. And I'll bet you what you like to read is easy to follow, pretty much. Because the reader has choices of what to read. Outside textbooks. Nobody reads textbooks, right? Skim, I know the deal. So do I. So you have an education audience out there. Assume that you want them engaged and you want them to keep reading. So it's gotta be mellifluous. It's gotta be like honey. It's just gotta flow. If you can say in 12 words what, the rest of those characters are using 25 words to say, and there's no difference in meaning, they're gonna read you. And that's what you want, because you're getting paid to do it too, right? Somebody else. Somebody else, yes? Sure.
Everything in a page and a half, because there was a lot of information.
Yeah. listen, I sympathize with you. And by the way, I gotta tell you guys, I'm a sinner. Any mistake you ever made, I've made it 10 times, okay? And I was accused, I once had an editor sort of ream me out for writing a 100-inch story. I don't know if you guys know what a 100-inch story is. But, you know, it could have passed as the Dead Sea Scrolls. It went on and on. He said, Rob, okay, I'm letting you do it this time. Never, ever do that again. Okay. And your challenge was you had a lot of good stuff, right? You had a lot of notes. Now, I went through my notes. I took notes too. I don't know if you guys noticed. I was scribbling away.
Mhm.
I had 9 pages of chicken scrawl. I had 9 pages of notes. So I know, and that helps me gauge what you guys are dealing with. So I'm not just sitting up there, you know, twiddling my thumbs. You had a lot of stuff. And one of the essences of journalism writing is selectivity, going with the best. That's why the more people you interview, the more stuff you have, but then you have the really good stuff that ends up in the story, not the okay stuff. You are under no obligation to report what everybody said at that panel, that forum, okay? Ideally, you kind of get, everybody would get a comment in there, but even then, if somebody was just basically full of cliches and nothing original that wasn't being said by others, you're not under an obligation to include them. But it would be ideal if you could. There was a lot of repetition. How many times did you guys identify people as like history professors? Probably multiple times. Make an initial reference of, you know, whatever you want. 4 historians and a psychologist, you know, but you have, of course, you have to identify the first time whether they're historians or psychologists, but that's it. And after that, it's just that person's last name, okay? It's Levy, it's Page, it's, you know, whoever. Allman, Turner, McGovern. And by the way, McGovern, a couple of you guys know who you are. We're spelling McGovern this way. Well, the spelling's okay. The problem is the punctuation. It's a capital G. Not to capitalize it, that's what makes a mistake of a person's name. You gotta be attention to detail. Okay? You gotta get names right, and that includes how you punctuate them. Okay? Somebody else? But let me go back to that. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You had an awful lot of stuff to play with. You know, geez, what are you gonna do? Okay. Okay. Well, listen. You know, I said a page and a half, but if you end up submitting 2 pages, you know, I'm probably not gonna bellyache too much, but I really want you guys to get the idea of the blessed word. It's just the good stuff, the reader, the good stuff. By the way, the guy on the job would probably complain that you wrote too long, you know, because they're waiting for a print product. They're waiting for a certain length, and they're going to plug it in on deadline. I just wrote a magazine piece for the college, and they asked me to write 400 words, and I ended up writing 500 too. So I'm a sinner, but they let it fly. Somebody else. Somebody else. Yeah.
You said I used really good quotes, but left out too much.
Was it a need for context to explain the quotes, or was it just you didn't have a reference to enough people who were there?
I didn't want to make it too long, so to me, I just used the quotes. I thought.
Yeah, I
they were
remember
more
what you
important.
had was good stuff. It's just
Yeah.
that there were 3 other people saying stuff, and that was mine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I left a chunk of stuff out.
Yeah.
Which when we had to write the paragraph of like the evaluation of what we thought, that's what I said.
That helps me. an
I
awful
ran
lot.
out of time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate. Listen, I know you guys, unlike the Silver Spoon crowd at Lehigh or somewhere else, you got jobs, you got careers, you got family obligations. I understand. I get it. I know that you're wrestling oftentimes with a lot of plates you're spinning, right? Juggling, several balls, whatever analogy you want to use. So I understand that. And time constraints can Yeah, you're not gonna deal with that many deadlines in here, but there is a certain exhilaration about having to do something, and it's gotta be done, and then it's done. It's not hanging over your head. How many times you guys had a paper to write in class, and you let it drag on, and never, and then it became this like mountain instead of, you know, little challenge. It's now this monstrosity that follows you throughout the day, this is on your mind. At least with this, the deadline, it's gotta be done. Yeah, it's gotta be done. Yeah, it's gotta be done now. And when it's done, for better or for worse, it's done. I've known a lot of people who found that exhilarating. I don't know if I was one of them or not, I forget now. But it can be. And you get in the habit of doing it. All right, somebody else to comment. Steph.
So how do you balance out the context with the quotes? Like, how many quotes is too many?
That's a very good question. Because one thing to avoid is quote fest, right?
Yeah,
Where's wall-to-wall
exactly.
quotes. And by the way, I've done that.
I'm the queen of quote
When I
fest
was
right now.
25 years old, they should have been firing me. I turned stories into quote fest, just
Yeah.
tape recorder with the
Yeah.
noise. Because it was easy, it was comfortable. I knew I had the quote right.
Right.
But it was a quote fest. So the question is, guys, this is a good question, and oftentimes I've seen, on YouTube or just DVDs, reporters talking about the crap, saying, I see too much reliance on quotes.
Okay.
Most of what you guys write or should write in news writing or features writing, which is more magazine-y style, ought to be paraphrasing, because most people whom you interview tend to be long-winded. Okay, said Hayes, who was being long-winded. And so you have to succinctly summarize what that person is saying, and that's called a paraphrase. And the majority of what you say, Steph, what you report, ought to be a paraphrase. Now,
Okay.
so the question comes back to, well, then what do you quote? And I think I pointed this out before. What you quote should be powerful.
Okay.
It should be colorful, or it should be telling. In other words, it should be in that person's words, because that person's words, maybe they're just strong. They're they really make the point. You can see the personality of the person or the emotion of the person in that person's very words. Okay? You don't need a lot of quotes, you just need a few good quotes. You sprinkle them like golden coins throughout your prose. Okay? But you gotta set them up.
Right.
You gotta set them up. Now, some of you guys make some, you had what could have been good points, but you didn't explain, like this whole thing about this Alabama theater. By the way, did we hear what city, or was that Alabama or was that New Orleans? Birmingham, Alabama. No, I don't think anybody actually, they said something about Alabama, but you could have said Birmingham, Alabama, one word. See, one word. Now we're getting a little getting tighter focus. Birmingham, Alabama. Now, if I understand it, they rebuilt this theater, right? And when they rebuilt it, they were conscious of seating arrangements there, and they were conscious about where the blacks had to sit in the original theater and where the whites could sit. But you referenced an Alabama theater and so objected to this or didn't be reminded of that, but you didn't explain the context. Well, what about the Alabama theater? Why would Professor Turner pissed off about that? What was McGovern's point? You got to give a little bit of explanation. This is called context. All right, so what's the deal? Yeah, Gabe.
You said you didn't want it to be chronological, which I understand, but it made more sense to me because it kind of flowed in with each other, like each person flowed into each other, and then it would just, I guess, make more sense.
My my objection, Gabriel, is not necessarily that you reported in the order in which they said it, but you were actually self-consciously saying he did this, and then he followed with that, and then he did that. You don't need to go there.
Okay.
Ideally, what you're doing is reporting in order of importance. And you had, imagine this space here is a visual representation of time, okay? Right?
Yeah.
So you can start your story with what happened at this point of the story, and then your second graph can be here, and your third graph can be based on what, and then paragraph 4 maybe with some context, and then, you know, you're under no obligation to write in chronological. If it works for you, fine. Now there are stories where chronology is essential, like you have these guys go on a crime spree. You know, they're knocking off Wawas in 3 states over the course of 2 days, and they're going Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New York, whatever. Well, then I can understand the chronology. Say, police give this account of what occurred during the crime spree, and then you can go in chronological order because it makes sense. The reader will appreciate the chronology there. But in our story, there's no need to, I don't see a need, and certainly not a reference to the chronology of what happened. You can report it the way you want in the order that they actually spoke, if it works for you. Okay, somebody else? Somebody else? Jared, what do you think?
Say like I repeated stuff a lot. Repeating what I said.
Yeah, and again, what I just said earlier, read aloud your item. You guys will be stunned, I think, if you practice that. Read aloud. Okay? Okay, let's see if, let's take very quick, I don't want to belabor this. We kind of were